These are students studying at the university, and it's their first presentation for the conference. And they're doing this in conjunction with Kevin, who also works at the university, a tutor. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. As I said, we're nearly up to 10. That'll be great. And thank you to the lady at the back to you. Thank you especially for coming to both of these talks today. So we can't have put you off too much in the first one. That's good news. And I'm also glad that we've actually got more audience than presenters. Otherwise, it would be quite embarrassing with the four of us here. We'd have to make up the audience ourselves. Okay, so we're talking about the influence of actually a little bit more than this, activity type and the teacher, but also the students' attitudes in promoting learner autonomy. In our project, we were very much practically classroom data focused, and we were rather on the learner autonomy novices, if you like, at the beginning, and we didn't do too much pre-reading, as it were. We just got on with collecting the data. But fortunately, when we started analysing the data we had, we were uncovering similar things to you see on like this list of factors for developing autonomy by Lee. We were finding out things like students need to volunteer to be autonomous, as it were. They need to be open to it and want to do it. They need to have choice. You need to be flexible in what you do and what they do. Teacher support is an important thing. Something actually we underestimated initially, thinking of autonomy as something that's done away from the classroom by the students, perhaps individually, whereas in fact both teacher support and peer support are very important in creating autonomous environments. So although our study was very practically based, as I said, we found it did link to various pieces of research that have been done. Next one. So very briefly indeed, the questions we were asking were to what extent the activity type, the teacher themselves, and the students' attitudes influence autonomous learning in the classroom. So that's what we were looking at, kind of all together. Taking just 2 classes, so it's in a local school, if we will go into that now. Organising our study, we'll tell you very briefly about the study, then we'll tell you about the kinds of materials we used, something about the teacher's attitude, something about the students' attitudes, very briefly about limitations, and some recommendations for the classroom, and finally a conclusion about what makes a learner or an autonomous learning environment. Okay, so to start with then, what we did was we went into 2 different classes of EFL learners, one intermediate, one advanced, and introduced materials that we felt might develop autonomy, while at the same time focusing on the students' attitudes to these kind of materials, and also looking at what the teacher does or doesn't need to do. Next one. So the data we collected, we did some teacher questionnaires, some student questionnaires, and we also, one of the activities we did was to create blogs for the students, and we got the students to reflect within the blog about blogs, and we used that as data. So this is the kind of data we had. So what we're going to talk about now then is the 3 areas. In a moment we're going to talk about materials, then the teacher's role, and then the students' attitudes. But just to introduce the materials part, why we focused on technology-based materials was, as I said, we wanted to get away from the kind of typical classroom, teacher-fronted, course book-led structure. So we thought, well, we'll introduce blogs, thinking that that's something that maybe can be done outside the classroom. We ourselves probably weren't really fully aware at the beginning of the role the teacher needs to play in getting things started. But we introduced blogs. Also, we took in and played some language games from websites, and tried to get the students to create their own games. But to tell you more about that is Nikki.
All right, thank you. And the first material that we did with them was blog. And basically what we did with the blog was to ask the students to create 4 entries on their blogs. This is one of the examples. And with the first group, which is an advanced group, We did it in a more prescriptive way. We just asked them to do what we wanted. Basically, just have to write the blog. But taking Bhattacharya and Chauhan's what they mentioned into consideration, which is editing a blog or creating a blog, it's a way to show a certain extent of autonomous learning. And so we kind of like made some amendment to our second group. In the second group, we kind of like started everything. We asked the students to set up blog from the beginning and then get them to go along until the comment part. Next. Yep. And for the second group, it's much more personalized, as they have to choose their own layout templates and they have the choices to choose what they wanted to write. And the second group turned out to be a much better group than the first one. Perhaps it's due to the group of mentality, which will be elaborated on the later on. And the second and we also found out that 14 out of 18 students like the idea of writing a blog, perhaps because they find it is beneficial to them, as well as they are able to share their feelings and information with others on the blog. And more importantly, they find it as a good way to improve their English as well. Having said that, one of the students found it boring. And the second material that we use with the students is language games, which are researcher-produced games and students-produced games. And this is one of the examples of researchers-produced game. It's like this one is like we just ask the students to create a new word randomly taken out from this long word. And we also have some students-produced games, which the students have to come up with their own games, referring to the website that we have given them. And and the significant finding is like the students, they mentioned through the feedback, they said they enjoy doing language games outside the classroom, but not in the classroom itself. This is perhaps doing such activities outside the classroom is a way of showing they have like a certain extent of autonomous learning. And they also mentioned that they prefer playing games rather than producing them. This is perhaps due to the fact of personal needs, which mentioned by Nation, because most of them just try to improve English language instead of trying to produce it. And interestingly, but not surprisingly, two of the students who are teachers, they did produce their games because through the feedback they mentioned about it is useful in the future for their teaching. And next, Nancy will further elaborate our findings.
Okay, I'll be talking on teachers' attitudes. Based on the teacher questionnaire and also the two teachers that we observed during our research, we found that their attitudes are very positive. So the first one, this will be based on two incidents that we saw during our research. The first one is student-produced games. They allow students to try out the games that they have prepared, and the teachers participated in the games conducted by the students. And the second one is about blog. They encourage students to become more autonomous by commenting on their blogs. This is because by commenting on their blogs, this will encourage students to log in into their blogs to read the comments that the teacher gave them. This is the comments that is given by the teachers. Okay, next. Okay, I'm going to talk on the teacher's role as well. There are several teachers' roles that are important in promoting learner autonomy. The first one is that teacher must be a believer in autonomy, because if the teacher is not a believer, then it's very difficult for them to promote learner autonomy to the students. Okay, the second one is participant. For instance, take the previous example, the student-produced games. The teacher not only allow the students to conduct the game, but the teachers themselves participated in the games that has been conducted. And scaffolding, for example, if let's say students conduct the game and also write